All right, welcome everybody. How's it going? We are back again with another batch of Pick One Pack One Crack-A-Packs, a bunch of Modern Horizons packs. We did this last week, so this is our second go with this kind of video, and people liked it. People said, yeah, this was a cool thing to do. If you didn't catch the last one, basically, I'm just opening some packs here. I've got a box that's like 3/4 full still, and we're just going to be going through the packs as if it were a Pick One Pack One Crack-A-Pack, talking about the cards. Also just a great way for me to just, grab bag, talk about a bunch of different cards that might not get talked about very often, kind of the fringe playables that aren't worth having a whole podcast segment about or anything, but, have a place. Most cards in this format, I would say, have a place, so it's just a good way to be able to talk about those. And also, if the pack is either not very interesting, or at least maybe the rare is, that's the clear pick, I'm also going to talk about the next cards I would take, so let's just get going. So let's look at our rares here. We've got Shillingar, Sire of Famine. So this is the 5 mana 6/6 flyer that you can sack something to make a blood, and then you can sack a bunch of blood to reanimate your graveyard. Yeah, that card's okay. I think this card is a little bit worse than it looks. Just big, dumb flyer, known for the battlefield effect. Solid one for sure, but not just a slam dunk pick one, pack one. We've got Invert, Polarity. And speaking of inverts, somebody in my last video was like, you can just not put the cards upside down so you can read them easier and you can just flip them in post. I might do that. I've already started doing it this way though, so I think it's probably going to be just doing it this way. So we've got Invert Polarity, which is an awesome card. Very strong. Counter target, spell, flip a coin, you get it. Also not just a slam dunk though, for sure. Obviously being a gold card and in one of the lesser color pairs, I will say. Got a Priest of Titania, and this is a card that you do tend to play in like your Eldrazi decks. Is a callback, or not a callback, it's literally a reprint, but it echoes back to older times in Magic where things were symmetrical, and this adds for each elf on the battlefield, not just elves you control. So just something to note, especially when you have like your own Priest of Titania and your opponent has a bunch of elves, just make sure you do the math right. Some other elves in the set too that are just like floating around there. There's Evolution Witness. There's one or two other things out there. So sometimes it taps for more than one. Sink into Stupor as one of the MDFCs. I like a decent amount. This is the bounce spell. Bounces a spell or a non-land. I actually forget quite often, I feel, when I play this card that it can bounce a spell. But just something to know. We've got If That Heralds the End, which is, I would say, more of a reward for being in an Eldrazi than a reason to go into it. Got Reckless Pyro Surfer, great aggressive 2-drop, definitely like that one. So let me just organize these a little bit more. Kind of put in some contenders in the pile here, put the rares in the Pyro Surfer. I think Pyro Surfer definitely belongs in that pile. Ooh, we've got one to contest what we have though. We've got Ajani Fells the Godsire. This is a good card, but I've actually come down on it a little bit. I've just found that a indicator of how good my deck is how many cheap cards I have in this format, which can kind of be a bit tricky to parse because you also do want some abilities to grind, like some ways to grind. It's not just like whoever has the cheapest cards win. You want like the right mix of a lot of cheap cards plus good top end cards. And this is a good top end card. Like I'm not down on it too much. I'm just saying I would take a 2-drop of comparable power or maybe even slightly less over this. For example, I might take the Pyro Surfer over Ajani Fells. We got 2 lands in a row here, Twisted Landscape and Seething Landscape. Just fine cards, not first pickable really. Airy Auxiliary, this is a first pickable card. I would take this over any of the cards, I think. And that's kind of like, the boring vanilla pick, but I do think this card is just awesome. It's just 5 power worth of stats, 3 of it being flying. You could take any of these cards, I think. They're all kind of in the same tier. Also, another card in the same tier. We've got Nightshade Dryad. Yeah, just a great one. And then we've got a Gravedigg, which is a card I generally play only if I've got some really good creatures, or if I'm like a black deck that has a lot of Marauders. The 2/1, both players sacrifice a non-token. I think this card, just recurring that card a bunch is pretty effective. So, a playable sometimes. Here's a card I've actually come up a lot on recently. Molten Gatekeeper. This is the one that pings your opponent every time you have a creature enter. And I just think there's a lot of not exactly combos, but just a lot of decks that make really good use of the card. Pairs well with Scurry of Gremlins, pairs well with Glimpse the Impossible, the red make 3 spawns, or exile the top 3 and make 3 spawns, or some number of spawns anyways. a lot of ways that you can kind of, it's almost a build around in itself, where you get 3 of these and just a bunch of token makers. Also, when you're doing that, you kind of have, you know, the Pyro Surfer in there as well. So yeah, a card that I kind of was like, okay, you know, it's a fine playable. Maybe it's a little bit better if you're going wide, and kind of upgraded it to pseudo common build around. So good news for the Gatekeeper. Not in the first pickable pile. But the other card, last card in the pack here, Petrified Meddler. Yeah, just a solid one. Good blue card. So out of the bunch here, this is actually a tough one because there's not a super clear answer. I think, you know, I said the Airy, and I think that would be my pick, but I say it's not super clear because any of these cards, I think probably discounting the rares, because I think these are actually a little bit worse than the commons and uncommons. I think you could take these. Could even take Schillingar if you were feeling like you want to play with a cool rare. Anyways, okay, so that would be, yeah, that would be my order, just like this, and then I think probably Dryad next, and then these two in that order. So Airy, Dryad, Pyro Surfer, and Ajani Fells. All right, good early pack. Good first pack there. That had a lot of discussion and a lot of cards that were quite relevant. So let's move on to pack 2 here. All right, pack 2, we have an Idol of the False Gods. So this is a card that I have played to good success in exactly the right deck. Like, it's kind of an unfortunate card because I think your deck already has to be good for it to be good. And what I mean by that is so many of the good cards in the set are ones that make Eldrazi spawn tokens. Of course, Writhing Chrysalis, but Eldrazi Repurposer, even Glimpse the Impossible is a card that has been going a little bit higher. Malevolent Remble. When I would say 11, 12 of your cards make spawns, this is a playable card, especially ones that make multiple spawns. But it's really, really bad if you don't have that number. So it actually has a place in the sense that I have found these days, when you are green-red, you get to play a lot of good cards. You get to play your Chrysalises and your Repurposers and your Rumbles and, you know, all these premium cards. A lot of the cards you're playing are going to be above rate of what your opponents are playing if they're not playing Eldrazi. But the payoff, or sorry, the trade-off there is because everybody's fighting for the Eldrazi cards, you end up a playable or 2, maybe even 3 sometimes short in these decks because it's just hard to get a very clean version of it where all 23 of your cards are good. So this card, Idol, kind of does solve a problem there, where if you are heavy enough in that kind of stuff, then you can count that as a playable. Felia. Ooh, okay. So Felia's great. Just fantastic card in general. Good aggressive card. Gets blockers out of the way. Good if you're grinding, you know, blinks some stuff. So that's going to be hard to top, I would say, because this is one of the better rares in the set. Bird Alive. For those who want to get spicy with their sneaky snacker decks, if you've got like 5 of them or something. I think even then it's not a great card. Bogger Trawler, pretty solid. MDFC. Triton Wavebreaker. I said most cards in the set have a place. I think this one does not. I think there's just not enough good cheap spells, and blue is somewhat aggressive, but not really enough to warrant this kind of card. So yeah, just not a card that makes your deck basically ever. Territory Caller. I like this one a lot. Yeah. Not better than Felia, but good. Ooh, another good one. Spawn Gain Commander. Yeah. All right, so got some cards that are, again, not better than Felia, but pretty close. Got a Deceptive Landscape, got a Shattered Landscape, got a Horrific Assault, another very, very strong one. A bunch of landscapes. That's all these packs are, a bunch of landscapes. Which, honestly, I think is the detriment of this draft format a little bit. I think if there was a dedicated land slot, it wouldn't really work because there's 10 lands here. But I wish there was a way that they could like limit the number of lands in each pack. Hard to do collation-wise, but I've just had a few too many packs that have had like 6 lands in them. Wither and Bloom, obviously good too. Infernal Captor. Yeah, this is another one I've played a little bit more often than I did in the early days of the format. And I guess by a little more often, I mean at all. I've been black a lot these days. I think black is a color I'm totally happy drafting. I think people have adjusted and know that it's not just like the best color. So when it's open, you tend to get some pretty good cards in those colors. And, you know, just comboing this with the classic steal and sack stuff. Either you, steal something and sack it to a, whatever, the black, sack a thing, destroy target creature, draw a card if it was modified. Or you've got your own Marauders, so you steal something, Marauder the thing you stole. You can do the steal and sack thing with this. And Corrupted Shapeshifter. Okay, so again, really good pack. Definitely going to take Felia, but if Felia wasn't in the pack, it gets a lot closer at that point. I think it's actually probably a clear Spawn Gang after that, but then I think you can make good arguments for any of these cards: Horrific Assault, Wither and Bloom, and Territory Color. Yeah. All right, good second pack too. Yeah, a lot of very playable cards. Which we haven't hit the 6-land packs just yet, so hoping to dodge those. Let's see if we can do that. All right. Got a Thopter token. Cool. We've got a Plains, and we've got a Scurrilous Entry foil. I actually like Scurrilous Entry a lot. So part of black being a color I'm drafting more, I just play Scurrilous Entry, a copy or two, sometimes even 3. Like, it's very good in blue-black, where it contributes to your triggers, but I think just in any grindy black deck, which is generally how I'm seeing black, it doesn't have to be, obviously it plays well with the black draw 3 stuff and the red-black artifact stuff, but if you're not doing that stuff specifically, I think just grindy black is good, and just filtering your draws, it becomes a real threat. So yeah, a card you got pretty late, and one I like quite a bit. Force of Cultivation. Okay, so this one, not great. It's the bad Cultivate. Ooh, spawning or sowing Mycospawn. Also not better than, probably better than Sentry and Cultivate. So that's going in the, we're going to take that pile for now. This is a 3-rare pack, Orgrim's Chant. Another one that's not great for us. Oh, wow, his pack's just full of a bunch of unplayables, unfortunately. Okay, Vexing Bauble. It's kind of funny. This card, I'm going to talk about this card for a second. It is a ever so slight fringe playable in like a red-black artifact deck. The issue with it though is, like, if red-black artifacts in this format truly was an affinity deck where you just wanted all these, like, the original Mirrodin affinity deck in limited, you just play a bunch of cantripping cheap artifacts. So you play these early, power out your affinity cards, and then you sack the things to draw a card later. A lot of them were kind of like this. It was like a cheap artifact that sacked to draw a card. That would be great if it was actually like an affinity style deck where a lot of your cards are just like power them out and I guess dump my hand. But there's not that many that are like that. There's the familiar, right? Refurbished familiar. But the problem with that, with this card, if you're putting it into that context, is you actually don't want to sack it for example, your Cranial Ram. You want artifacts on the battlefield. So kind of plays well if you've got a lot of refurbished familiars. You need that last playable, but doesn't play that well with if you've got a bunch of Rams, because just having an artifact that doesn't do anything is not good enough, even though it contributes to the count. Trickster's Elk. This is a card I play almost exclusively in green-white when I've got the Watchdog that puts counters on itself, the green-white gold common. I also think it's okay with Mandibular Kite, just going Kite into this, not bad, but low tier playable generally. Voltstorm Angel, I would take that over Mycospawn. Rosecott Knight. I play my fair share of Rosecott Knights lately. I think this card's actually pretty good. It's pretty easy to have a deck where you're just likely to hit. When I say pretty good, I don't mean it's like, a top common ran all of a sudden, but a card I'm happy to have in that like 20 to 23rd slot, especially if you have some high rarity enchantments or artifacts, like if you've got the Nantuko, for example, the green Nantuko with the landfall ability to copy things. Finding that a little more often. Horrific Assault. I will be taking that over both these cards as well. A Landscape, a Curse Marauder. That's the card I've been talking about. Yeah, thank you. A Curse Marauder. Couldn't think of that first word. Skoa Ember Mage. Yeah, it's a card I play once in a while. It's kind of just like okay red card. Nothing special. And Demon Furrier. I love Demon Furrier. I love making Demon Furrier good. It's fine on its own, but in blue-black, it is chef's kiss. So yeah, I think my ordering for this pack would be Assault, which I do think is better than the Mycospawn, and then probably Angel and then Marauder, although Marauder and Angel is close. I like these cards. I like Marauder a lot in the black decks, and Angel is a fine top-end card for your like red-white decks, but nothing too special, to be honest. Interchangeable 5-drop. I don't think a red-white deck with Rosecott Knight at the top is that much worse than with Angel. It's worse, but not by a ton. All right, let's go to our next pack here. See what we have. We've got a Forest, an ad card, and an Aether Spike. Yeah, so Aether Spike's an interesting one. I think that the value of this card, or how much you want to put this card in your deck / draft it highly. Well, draft it highly, not exactly. You're never really drafting it highly, but how many copies you want in your deck kind of depends on where you're playing, what rank you're playing on, your local game store. Because I found in Mythic, people just play around with this card all the time. And I think part of the equity of this card is just getting people when they don't expect it. Now, if you're playing at lower ranks, I think I'm more likely to play it. Although if you're playing at lower ranks, then maybe a counterspell is the kind of card that, as you as a player, might be a little bit tricky to figure out when to pass the turn and hold up mana or just cast something else. So your results may vary with Aether Spike. It's a pretty good card if you are heavy energy, if you can just make it, energy equals 4. But if you're just throwing it into any deck, I'm not huge on it, especially in the higher ranks. Ooh, Flage. That's a money hit too. Flage, Titan of Fury's Fire. Fire's Fury. So we're not going to find anything that's better than that. Deserted Temple. Rush of Inspiration. Rush of Inspiration. Yeah, good MDFC. Solar Transformer. This is a card I take pretty early. It's just good in a lot of decks. Like, it's one of the very few goes in a lot of decks cards in this format. Good in Eldrazi. Good in Energy. We've got Metatastic Evangel. Also a really good card. Would put that in the pile there. Got a Landscape, got a Dog Umbra. Oh, actually, Dog Umbra reminds me that one kind of little format update is I've been playing more removal in the last little while, or at least drafting it higher. I want probably 5-ish removal spells, point and click, reach out, kill that thing, removal spells, because the games go a little bit longer on this week of the format. As in, people's decks are a little bit clunkier, yours included, most likely. So the games just tend to drag on a bit. You're not just going to get run over as often. And when the games drag on a bit, well, there tends to be some pretty good cards lurking in everybody's deck. So, and those cards come up to play a little bit more often than not in a slow game. Like, if the game's going to end on turn 6, 7, maybe even earlier, consistently with your deck, sure, I think you don't have to prioritize removal that highly. But I've just found even with my red-white decks, they do, your opponents, I think, have come to understand how to combat those decks, when to block, when to attack versus red-white, but also you don't get super streamlined red-white decks anymore. And so the games, again, just go a little bit longer. But Dog Umbra, yeah, a fine card. Not a combo with the Curse Marauder, by the way. Do not put Dog Umbra in your Curse Marauder deck. You will have a bad time, because if you pass this before Marauder, Marauder doesn't really do anything. Nightshade Dryad. I think I would take Nightshade Dryad over the Evangel. That's a pretty close pick, though. Rosecott Knight again, Dream Drinker Vampire, Simulacrum, and another Aether Spike. Okay, go. Well, clear Flage there. Flage is excellent. And let's do one more pack. One more pack, shall we? All right. Last pack here. Let's see if we make it an interesting one. We've got a Foil Plains, a Foil Obstinate Gargoyle. I just had this card in a deck, actually. A white-black grindy deck, where I have a decent amount of sacrificing stuff. I have like Essence Reliquary to pick this up and make it an infinite blocker. It's a card that I don't put in my deck very often, mostly because Black-White is not a deck I get into often, but I think you can do some interesting things with it. It's not a card that has very good stats on 17 lands, but I've had decks that, as long as they have, I think that the main thing is sacrifice outlets. If you can sacrifice this for value, I think it's a playable card. I'm not trying to talk it up too much, but Kozilek's Command. Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, it's a hard to cast card, but very strong. So let's put that in the probable pile. Barbarian Ring, card I think you generally shouldn't play. Is it Generatorium? Another card I think you generally shouldn't play. And when I see it in play, I usually am like, your deck doesn't look heavy enough energy for this card. It's good enough if you've got, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 cards to make energy, and you're a slower blue-red deck. But it's just like you have to be all in to want this card. Skittering Precursor, yeah, fine card. I think this one's just like very okay. I am fine playing it, nothing special. Kozilek's Unsealing, I like this one. Yeah, it's, I sound enthusiastic about it. I don't think it's great, as in it's powerful, but it's a fun one. I think it is the kind of one of the worst of the enchantment build around value engine things, or non-creature value engine cards in the set. But I've had decks where you just got 4 ways to trigger the draw 3, and I think that's what you're really looking for. Or you care about making spawns for various reasons. Maybe like I've actually had a red-blue deck that it was a weird mix of Eldrazi and like kind of red aggro stuff, and I had a bunch of Molten Gatekeepers and Glimpse the Impossibles and some of the 7-drops. So I was able to like make a bunch of tokens and trigger my Molten Gatekeepers. So some weird cross synergy things you can have going on there. Landscape, Malevolent Rumble. I haven't seen this one yet. Great card. I still actually think underrated, in the sense that when green does not open in my seat, I still see this card go pretty late. And it can be easy to be like, ooh, 7th pick Rumble, maybe green's open, but it's just one of those cards you have to have on your radar as, yeah, some people don't value it as highly as they should. Okay, well, here's our first Chrysalis. We're going to take that, I think, over Kozilek's Command. And we will not find a card that beats Chrysalis. Jolted Awake, Retrofitted Transmogrant, other card I like playing in those black grindy decks. Sometimes I'll even play 2. Discharge, definitely an argument to be had about Discharge versus Chrysalis. I still think you should take Chrysalis, but I've had a lot of Chrysalises that I ended up not playing recently that, if I just took a easier to cast card, I would play it. And Warp Tusker is our last card. I like Warp Tusker a lot. This is one of the better, easy to pick up top end cards, which is pretty good. All right, well, that's those packs. And this one, I would go Chrysalis. I think, Discharge over Command, if that was a question in anybody's mind. So this was fun. Once again, if you enjoyed this, please like and comment and all that stuff. I still have half a box, maybe even a little bit more to open. If you would like to see more pack openings and cracker packs and updated takes on the format as we go on. But thanks so much for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.